Hi there. So last night I attended a bookish PowerPoint party hosted by my friends at Sniffers. Sniffers is a monthly book club that I joined recently, and I've just been loving that community. They're so nice, they're so fun, and they're doing stuff like bookish PowerPoint parties, which is right up my alley, so I joined as a speaker. I had a few topics in mind, but my presentation ultimately became about The Little Prince, specifically in South Korea. So we didn't get to record the whole discussion, the whole session, which is a shame because so many other people talked about interesting topics. Like somebody talked about haiku, a couple of people talked about YA fiction like Shadow and Bone, Six of Crows, Twilight even, and we even heard from somebody talk about trashy Chinese web novels. So it was such a diverse like lineup of topics and speakers. I just thought to share mine with people on the internet. Like, in my defense, when I was building this presentation, I thought there would be more articles and studies online about it, but I quickly discovered that there were none. So this is probably just me talking out of my ass and just like dumping all my ideas, but hopefully I make sense. Anyway, we'll see. So my presentation is about exploring the ubiquity of The Little Prince in South Korea. So I've been to a number of places around the world, and no other country, at least from what I've seen, seems to love The Little Prince as much as South Korea does. And I'll show you what I mean by this in a bit. My presentation really begins with this question in mind, like, why do South Koreans love The Little Prince so much? Like, what is it about the story that resonates so deeply, like, in their culture and in the South Korean ethos, you know? Let me take you on a little tour first. So Petit France is a French-themed cultural village near Seoul that has the Little Prince all over it. There's a statue right at the entrance, as you can see, and a memorial hall dedicated to Saint-Exupéry. I'm just gonna probably butcher his name throughout this. So here are some photos I took when I went there a few years ago. So there's a Little Prince on a roof, a painting of the Little Prince playing a saxophone, the painting of the fox, which is a very important character, and a mural, I think, of the Little Prince with the birds that he uses to fly from his asteroid to explore other worlds. You can even sit in that little chair if you want to. So from there we take a train to Busan to visit Gamcheon Cultural Village. It's one of those artsy neighborhoods with lots of murals painted on alleys and actual homes. So there are also a lot of art installations and sculptures all over this community. And to nobody's surprise, there's the Little Prince with a little sculpture of the fox. You can actually even sit beside the Little Prince, put your arm around him for a photo, but like just be really careful because I think this is like, I remember it to be like concrete railing, and like you have to climb over like the little post, and there's like a drop to like the street or like the roof below. I've also noticed that it's a favorite among idols. The Little Prince is often shown in the media, particularly by K-pop idols, either as a performance or a visual concept, or they've got on record to say that they've read the book, or it's like one of their favorite books, like Jungkook of BTS, Blackpink's Jisoo. Here are some examples. Yeowok of Super Junior made a whole song and video inspired by the Little Prince. Jin from BTS also dressed up as the Little Prince for his solo stage at one of their online concerts. And you can even hear Jeong from, like, I know they haven't disbanded, but like the defunct GOT7, read the Little Prince aloud in Korean if you miss him and his band. Yeji from ITZY, Stream in the Morning, their comeback, has also said that The Little Prince is the book that got her into reading. When she read it, she cried, and she sees herself in the character of the Rose the most. So those are just some examples that I found, but there are definitely more if you look online. I want to dive in a little deeper to figure out the why, and here's what I think. And again, I may just be talking out of my ass here, but like, these are my thoughts as to why the story resonates so much with South Koreans. So we start with the book's universal appeal. So it's an endearing story with cute illustrations. What's not to like? It's accessible because it reads like a children's story, but at the same time it's also intergenerational because it's a source of wisdom and lots of life lessons. It's timeless, it's a classic. I'm not going to dive deep into the history of Franco-Korean relations or globalization, but I wanted to note that in 2016, France and Korea celebrated their 130th anniversary of their diplomatic ties, and one of their major activities was a huge exhibition and tribute to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and the Little Prince. And I also want to say that French culture is largely viewed positively among South Koreans. You know, they like French literature, they like French food, they like French coffee, the French aesthetic, Chanel. So even though there weren't a lot of published studies about this that I could find, maybe I'm just bad at research, I did reach out to people on Reddit. And luckily a couple of Koreans, one Korean and one Korean American specifically, gave me their 2 cents. So one of them said it's a more popular book among South Korean adults, and I think this makes sense because even though The Little Prince is a children's story, I think I was only able to really appreciate it as an adult. There's just so much to digest in this short story. Like every page offers the reader something to think about and reflect on, particularly about adulthood. But I want to spend some time with the second point from the person that said this book hits a deeper need of Koreans to connect. So consider some aspects of South Korean life and culture. So, you know, South Korea is a small nation that just can't contain its greatness, which is why like we have the Hallyu wave, which exploded all over the world, which is why we have like Samsung, the tech giant. And I think a lot of it is attributed to their culture of high performance and excellence. But there's a lot of stress around that because the pressure to be successful starts at an early age at the school level in South Korea and continues well into adulthood. So there's a fight to get into the top schools, the top companies, to have like the ideal face and body, to really create this outward image of success. So much so that their culture of high performance and excellence, I think, now becomes a culture of endurance. Like how long can you last and how far can you go in this cutthroat environment? And the pressure of it all, I'm sad to say, contributes to South Korea's very high rate of self-harm among teens and adults. And I believe it's one of the highest in the world, and I think it's the second highest in Asia. So point is, there's a lot of stress in almost every aspect of South Korean life, and if we look at some of the adult characters in the book that the Little Prince meets, it's possible that many South Koreans are able to relate to them, like the solitary king who has like this false sense of authority. So I think that means like a hunger for like power and prestige, and you know, the thought that only being at the top is what makes a person successful. We also meet the conceited or vain man, and I think that speaks to South Korea's very high rate of cosmetic surgeries, the highest I think in Asia. And I think Korean beauty standards are like really tough, like really rigid. There's a real pressure to conform to what they consider beautiful and attractive in South Korean society. So like South Korea has been so successful at so many things, but this kind of development and success comes with a price. So how does The Little Prince tie into that? So I want to go back to Yeji for a second and talk about the rose, which she relates to and is also one of the most important characters in the book, and I think is also a symbol of love and all the wise, positive lessons that the Little Prince learns about. So like this book has so much to teach about how to live a meaningful life, almost like a guidebook. And on the Little Prince's adventure away from his asteroid and away from his rose, he learns, of course, the most popular lesson from the book, that what is most essential is invisible to the eye, and that love means being responsible for others. And I want to argue during this presentation that being in love is also being responsible for oneself. So now I want to talk about the concept of healing time. So if you watched a lot of Korean variety shows, this term comes up often, and it's often used in the context of taking a vacation. But I think it's essentially a chance to pause their hyper fast, hyper digital, hyper stressed life, create some distance from it, and reassess their priorities, and just really let their spirit recover. And like the person said earlier, to connect, I think in this case means to connect to a gentler, more meaningful way of life. My second point is, what does the fox say? Because the fox is the character that teaches the little prince and readers that what matters isn't like money or a fancy job title on paper or what you look on the outside. What matters is the things that you can't see, like love and kindness and having a childlike curiosity about the world, creativity, among other invisible things. And my third point, I want to touch on the uniquely Korean concept of jeong, which is one of those Korean words that don't have a direct English translation and is a word that Koreans themselves find hard to define, but in essence it means a broad set of positive emotions that permeate all aspects of Korean life, like love and empathy, affection, compassion, sympathy, attachment, passion, that's directed to all living things and non-living things. So jeong is what joins all Koreans at all levels with each other and with the world. So it's as ubiquitous as the Little Prince, and its source really is the collective nature of Korean society. So I think connect in this sense could mean connect with others, like to not bottle everything up until it reaches the point of self-harm, but to reach out for help when you need it, to reach out for friendship, for wisdom, for love. And my last point also includes, of course, loving yourself, which, and this is just a side note, is why I think BTS's message of love yourself hits so deep with South Koreans and with the world, So from looking outward, now we look inward. Love others, love yourself. So in Yeji's case, I don't know why I made her like a case study. She read The Little Prince, she saw herself in the rose, and learned a lot of things from the book that led her to realize that, that she, even though she's a leader, she doesn't have to take all the pressure of being a leader at a young age, because she has her band, she has ITZY, she has her team, and the love from their fans. And I think, that's a form of love for others and for herself. jeong. So I say now in conclusion that The Little Prince is a much loved book in South Korea because it's a healing book. Reading it counts as healing time, and they honor the story by keeping it in their lives and sharing it with others again and again. When I was doing my research about jeong, I read an article that talks about an ad for Choco Pie that attempted to explain jeong. So imagine a woman and a kid, and they're out shopping, and the girl asks her mom, like, "Mom, like what is jeong? Like, what is it?" And the mom is taken by surprise, like she doesn't know how to answer this. But she sees like a choco pie on the shelf, so she reaches for it and gives it to her kid, and that answers the question, that solves the problem. So choco pie in this case represents everything about jeong that's hard to express in words. And I share that because I want to say, like, finally, that besides healing, The Little Prince is like choco pie. You can find The Little Prince in Seoul, you can find him in Busan, you can definitely find him in other provinces of South Korea. You can find him on the internet through your favorite K-pop idol. It reaches you, and it's easy to find in South Korea because they share it with each other freely, like a gift that keeps on giving. So The Little Prince is jeong. And that's my presentation. Thanks for listening to my idea and word vomit, and hopefully it makes sense. Let me know what you think. Bye.